Hello, everyone. We're back at it again. This is your host, Jeffrey Tyson, and today we are doing chapter 2. The name of chapter 2 is called "A Day in the Life: The Angel and the Alien." The quote goes, "Would there be this eternal seeking if the found existed?" Quote by Antonio Porcia. The day is Saturday, June 12th, 1378 at 4:20 in the morning in the area of Marsala of the Kingdom of Sicily. Deep in the Marsalan Reef near the coast of Vio, in southeast of the island of Stagnone, begins an impalpable seaquake that is faint to the aquatic beings of the perimeter and unexposed to the senses of man in their stillness, shaking the earth to its purpose. Following the quake, a vortex opens, which is camouflaged by the water and is marked with a faintly illuminated glow of a spiral configuration that releases the outsider. Discharged unaware and unconscious of her new image and surroundings, she wakes up floating in the darkness and feeling not herself. The feel, taste, texture, temperature, and its movement when against the flow ensures her that she is indeed in water. Now, innately of her kind, being an excellent swimmer is common. However, the outsider faces inconvenience in her swimming because of impaired vision. Although it is still dark above ground, it is even darker underwater. Yet that is not what strips her of her sight, but an attachment to an image that does not belong to her. The outsider's true image is without the defilements she is transfigured to have, and an excessive amount at that. She feels this stringy and netty substance that she doesn't realize is attached to her scalp. It makes her feel tangled up in something, and the more she pulls at it, the more it hurts her. Refusing to go down without a fight, she attempts to renew the long filaments before her face, thinking that it's between where she is and what she wants to see. Meanwhile, in the midst of her efforts, she is slowly floating to the top, unbeknownst to her, and in the bearing of her temporary distraction, but the tangled threads are presenting to be a problem for her. She's becoming frustrated and impatient. She is trying hard to pull the filaments off her, and even in great pain, she yanks, but it proves to be futile. While attempting to separate what she is not thinking to be part of her, considering her unawares, she paddles her legs in her struggle, which inadvertently takes her off course into a wall face first. Luckily for her, the thick filaments in her face lessen the blow received, barely hurting her. However, in her efforts, she is starting to run out of air and begins to think of letting her fingers trace the fibrous paradynamic fixture. While thoroughly and carefully dissecting the threads, her body is shifting in place. She starts at the top of her head and is a bit startled because she feels the abnormal connection of something being firmly attached to her in slumber, and ironically, remembering nothing irregular before she was induced into slumber. She follows the hair under her arms and around her waist and discerns a very disturbing difference, which makes her heart and skin jerk in place and her backward against the brittle wall. Alarm 1. Her lumawa is now with a soft texture and round shape. Its equivalence is that of a woman's breast and bust, whereas in her true image, the density is similar to an armadillo's armored plate, but significantly more durable. At this point, her heart races in concern, and by her reaction to that, she jerks backward into the wall of brittle and rough rocks, where now she can feel the coarseness behind her. She begins to panic while touching her exposed back. Alarm number 2. Fear overwhelms her into tears that can't run down her face, for she is now without her Mourikis, a thing comparable to an armor upon her species rare, like an abalone with its armor but extensively harder. She pushes herself from the wall and frantically examines her back. She then attempts her face, where the hair now becomes a little less fastened, to which she can see in her upper right peripheral as some of her hair flows upward, permitting her to move toward the brighter section at the top of the surface. She can see the filaments floating above her, away from her eyes, which presents opportunity to witness this spectacle. She swims in the direction of the surface, and as she draws closer to its minuscule light, she notices with wide eyes the pigment of her skin on her hand and arms. Alarm number 3. In complete neglect to the stipulation of her mission, her world stops. In a paralyzing dread, she feels a sharp pain in her heart, and at the top of her lungs, she screams in torment, as if she were being burned alive with supersensitivity, like the organs between the eyes of a rattlesnake when in hot temperatures. Now in frantic mode and blending despair, mixing her tears with the waters, she vigorously shakes her arms as if to rid herself of the pigment by will. Out of panic, she has difficulty breathing, adding to her pending air-depleting dilemma. Her heart is attacking her beneath her breast. She is slowly descending lower into the water because of her borderline consciousness, as well as nearing her first-time experience with depression. All of a sudden, a voice calls out to her, Zimuri. The voice is similar to the tone that Luciana heard translating for the Lord, but the outsider is unaware of the first call because of her impaired disposition, leaving the voice to call again, but this time, it calls with an additive and with a little more volume to jolt her senses. Zimuri ete apika suma. At immediate detection to the second call, her eyes widen to the reception of this voice acknowledging her whereabouts. She looks around and sees no one there. On the other hand, of her world, she knows that the unseen communicates by thought using telepathy. So by that, she responds back by thought as one who has been renewed in hope. I am here. However, in her thinking, if that voice is communicating by her thought and cannot be seen, which is also of irony, that voice must be above the surface where she is trying to go. Did this voice hear her? The voice has not responded to the reply. In dire need to make it to the soil and contemplate the matter, she struggles, not having the strength to push her way to the land, as if she were being restricted or limited in her normal abilities. Impatient and in need of help, she screams by mouth in fatigue and frustration, down here. Now, although no one else would have heard that scream, it doesn't stop her from doing that, but fear influences various reactions. So the voice thought. Understanding her plight, the voice speaks to her in her tongue, saying, be of solace and without qualms, Gurisi. You are no longer alone. As the outsider begins to relax, she feels herself being lifted afloat. While drifting above water, the outsider's sight is again covered by her hair, considering their physics, but her momentary lethargy and confusion strips her of friends. Empathetic to her state, the voice speaks to her, saying, how is it that you place thought absent your charge? Put a thought behind you till you have given acknowledgement to your purpose and what is to follow. In the meantime, please reach forth your hands so that I may relieve you of your straits. During the process of extending her hands, She inquires, speaking in her language, and by communicating through telepathy. What is to follow? I do not understand the meaning to this. Speak to me its meaning. As the voice places her on shore, it gives her physical body a command, then inquires with a mystified look upon his face, saying, "Stay yourself as you are without moving the globe, till you are commanded otherwise." Now, how is it do you not consider the stipulation that was to occur upon your entering of this planet? Has the fear of your circumstance conquered your recollection? Was it not spoken to you by your Audiobook, saying that your image will no longer be your own upon this distant land of which you are to service our will? Such is what was spoken to you by your Audiobook, no? Immediately she remembers with the thoughts of retrospect rushing at the speaking of them, and most of her inbuilt senses and skills activated. She then replies in thought, yes, I remember now. But while overcoming anger and fright to her most recent experience, she replies with a slight bitterness in her speech, not immediately discerning its knowledge of her prior discussion, saying in thought, "May you pardon the emotion that I am to express, for there is no intention to inflict to you any wound, especially in consideration to you delivering me upon this soil to my safety, of which I am most grateful. But you are not suggesting that I bear no consideration to the conditions presented, are you? Conditions like opening my eyes into a darkness that stripped me of the matter surrounding me, let alone without another to see me into the know?" The voice chuckles, then responds, "Which I have and I am. But why this way? That is a question belonging to your Audiobook, not to me." The outsider is silenced, and the voice continues, "Indeed, you have displayed the intensity of a Wugor Guea, by which I am most intrigued. However, using that energy here may ground you in turmoil. Your lords spoke of your tenacity, speaking that you can endure much, considering your past sojourning paths. You underwent 36 minutes underwater attempting to renew those foulness, till you forsook your composure. But until now, you have not endured this under these conditions. Let this experience serve you, that you give thought to your composure instead of your doubt and emotions." She contemplates in a moment's notice of a mystifying matter, discerning the voice's mention of your lords and what was said between her and her lords, as well as its ability to speak her tongue, considering its mention of her entering this planet, which would imply that she is no longer on her planet. She attempts to move her head and body to rise for a viewing of this voice, but is unable to willingly. After she ceases movement, she then replies, speaking with a string of questions. "Under these conditions, your lords, still your words for but a moment, and speak to me of this. How is it that you knew I was there? Also, you say entering this planet. If this is a planet other than Guissalubea, how do you come to know of my speech? For it is spoken by my lordrums on my tongue's reach, saying that of this soil your tongue is survived, but beyond Lubean skies your tongue is deprived. Yet such awareness comes with exceptions, that unless you be of Lubean ground, not one of the flesh can utter its consecrate bound. And of the last, you speak of my lords as if of familiarity. Being of another planet, how is it that you know of my lords or my arrangement? No one else was there in our presence with us. Our speech was absent with the lives belonging to the land, and hidden within my Lord's power, a placement in which they spoke to me, saying, "To this land you are entering as one."
If you like what you heard so far, please subscribe to my Patreon for more. Thank you.